This is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In podcast. I'm Max Rabin. This is my co-host Brent Jackson. What's up, Brent?
What's up, Max? How are you?
I'm good. I'm here.
It's weird. We don't have on the headphones. We don't have looking at you on the screen. It's definitely different.
Now suddenly I'm nervous. Anyway, whatever. That's fine. What's amazing about this podcast is like we keep asking amazing realtors and real estate talent to come on the show, and they just come right on here and tell us everything.
Surprisingly.
I mean, right?
Exactly. Because we're competitors across the board. It's like telling us your secret sauce or whatnot, how you got from rags to riches. It's fascinating, and that they're sharing it with us. And we're taking our notes and we're going to copy.
Yeah. That's what we really want to do. We're just trying to copy all the best things and, take them for ourselves. So our guest today is Lindsay Reishman, yet another titan in DC real estate. I've known Lindsay pretty much since I started in the business. He started in 2004. And then he's also, one thing I think is really interesting, Lindsay, is that you opened your own brokerage. You had your own brokerage for a while. And that's always a really tricky thing to step out there on your own when you're in a world of big brands and other, companies like Compass that had a lot of private funding before they went public. But why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate and what was the beginning of your career like?
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's fun. I guess this is my backyard of real estate. I started DuPont Logan back in 2004. And I wanted to be a developer, but I didn't have any money, didn't have any experience. So I figured I'd find projects for developers. That's how I got started. So back in the day, Ken Taylor, who was a small boutique brokerage, I started with Ken in 2004 and was basically trying to find projects for developers. And then I fielded calls when people were inquiring about the projects he was selling in this neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And that sort of morphed into a sales business. So I didn't really intend to go off and start being an agent fully, but backed into it through that.
So you really started out more like thinking about development and looking for all kinds of ideas and options for different developers.
Yes. Yeah. I was really excited about, I had lived previously in Alexandria, Arlington, Potomac, sort of outside of the urban core. Yeah. So I was excited when I came downtown and saw everything that was happening downtown and sort of the rejuvenation of the city to be a part of that. And so that's what intrigued me about development and sucked me in.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Tennessee.
Wow.
Yeah, small town. It's ironic that I'm from Sewanee, Tennessee, which is a tiny town, 1,000 people, and living in DuPont Circle was actually closer to my life in Sewanee than it was when I lived in the burbs, because you get to know the people in the community, and so I really love
building or something like that, like
villagey.
Everybody.
Right.
What brought you to DC?
It's kind of random. I went to school in Vermont, and so I got to choose between DC and Boston. So I split the difference, came back to DC to get closer to Tennessee. But I have family in the area, uncles, aunts, so forth.
So you're always familiar with the area?
Yeah, a little bit. But it was a random move. There was no particular reason for me to be in DC proper.
Interesting.
But you were starting out so you were working with a boutique brokerage, Ken Taylor, which is a total throwback. I hadn't even heard that name in so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember those days too, in those condo projects. So we're looking for these development projects. So what made you transition to going into just sales and being a realtor? Was it just part of the working on these projects? Or?
Yeah, I mean, those always take a little while to develop. So I found a few for developers, but it was needle in the haystack even back then. And so I just started working with buyers who were inquiring about the projects, and it morphed into a sales business. Yeah. So I, right when I started doing it, I started getting intrigued by the idea of creating a group, and I quickly I got a buyer's agent a year in and decided to focus on developing a brand in the community. Mm-hmm. I also, another throwback, I listened to Hobbs Herder. Did you guys ever hear?
I don't know that one.
What's that?
So Hobbs Herder back in the day was a big believer in marketing yourself. Okay. And so I quickly took to that and started sending out a bunch of postcards in DuPont Logan, and I branded myself a luxury condominium specialist. And it was self-fulfilling prophecy. Before long, I started actually sort of knowing more about condos, and people would contact me saying, I know you're an expert in condos. And so it morphed into a sales business from there.
So no, I started like in 2005, shortly after you, but I always followed in your footsteps, watching you market yourself. Because I remember like you were standing in a photo in might have been on 16th Street. It was that condo, but you were standing, that was your claim to fame. Then you did like the movie night, I think on P Street. Like you were the DuPont Circle specialist.
Yeah.
Way back when. I
mean, just for the record, I always thought of Martin and Jeff as the DuPont specialists.
Yeah, so they were before you.
Right,
okay.
Right. Yeah. And, it was sort of bold at the time to feel like I could get into that market. But it is amazing to me how quickly you can get some traction if you really commit to something.
To the branding.
And to the branding, yeah.
So what happened first? Was it you saw your first project, or did you decide to venture out from brokerage to owning your own brokerage?
So I decided I went to Coldwell Banker for a few years and to experience what a larger brand was like. And I built out my group. And then I started evaluating my options at that point. I feel like every agent goes through this at some point where you take like a real look at the landscape.
Sure.
And I just felt like for me, it was about providing the best experience I could for my clients. And I thought that if I just retained all of the commission, that I could deploy that and provide a better experience for my clients than if I were at the brokerages. So it was not actually, I wasn't intending to grow a brokerage. I really was just trying to keep my business that I felt like people were calling me because of me and the service I was providing, not because of the brand. And so it seemed more efficient to basically run my own brokerage. It was a little cavalier in retrospect to not pay any attention to the brand, but that was the idea. So when I started my brokerage, it was just me and an assistant. That was it.
Wow.
These should be noted, a little slightly simpler times. I mean, there were more boutique brokerages in the city.
True.
I mean, really, our company that we work for, which is now an affiliate of Sotheby's International Realty, was basically a small boutique firm in like the early 2000s. It's the same thing.
Right.
And so it wasn't uncommon. You had, your major brands, Coldwell Banker. You had Century 21, which really wasn't even here. You had Coldwell Banker. Long and Foster was a big company for this area. But and then like a group of boutique brokerages. Mm-hmm. So, and you were one of those companies in the 2000s when things were starting to ramp up, a lot of condo development. So that makes a lot of sense, actually. That was a really good starting point for you. So how long was your brokerage in business, the Reishman?
So from 2010 to 2014. And basically, I started wanting more administrative support than I could justify based on my own sales volume.
Yeah.
So I started bringing in some agents so that I could hire more people. It was all backwards,
right.
But I was just like, I wanted a transaction coordinator. I wanted a listings person. I wanted a marketing person. And so I kept adding agents, and that was our niche eventually, is that we ended up with 26 agents. Nobody had an assistant of any sort. So all of the agents basically co-opt the support staff. And the support staff was really good. And that's what ended up, we had a few great agents early on who were the right fit culturally, and they attracted other people with like minds. And then we had this great administrative team, and that was why people joined the brokerage at the time.
Where did you get that concept? Because in my knowledge, you were one of the forefront thought leaders on bringing in like transaction coordinator, contract to close, operations person, runner, all that jazz. Like, Compass, what is now Compass, basically in my mind, took your idea and ran with it. Maybe they had it up in New York or whatnot, but like you were doing everything that teams and other brokerages are now have implemented. Yeah,
they didn't have that either. They inherited that from my business model for better or worse. Sometimes I wonder, but I guess it came from the fact that I wanted these services, and therefore I was really trying to solve my own problem. And then through that, felt like there was an opportunity to provide that for the agents who had come to the company. So it just became our value proposition. Like, clearly I did not spend a lot of money on marketing the company. So I didn't have like a brand. I didn't have beautiful fancy office space or a bunch of technology. So really that was sort of what I felt like was my unique value proposition as a brokerage.
Was that you had the back end set up already for the agents when they could just step in and like walk into the machine basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see. I mean, I really saw some agents, some of whom had been in the industry for a while, who had been doing okay, but then they tapped into that system and it really worked. That when agents felt like they could make a promise to their client that the process was going to go smoothly and go well, and then actually execute on that, like their business took off, and they were able to focus more on their business than on trying to, create a process or hire, train, and manage a staff. So that was very fulfilling to me, is to see people really thrive in that environment. And some of those agents, just for the record, have gone on and done enormous things too.
Like one of the biggest agents, I always think of Jen Samira, love her to death, but like I always thought of her as kind of like your underling, right? Like you kind of brought her up to speed and like she took off. But I don't know if that's one of the agents you're speaking about, but I remember way back when you guys were Lindsay Reishman Real Estate, she was under your wing and doing a lot of stuff over in Capitol Hill. And now she's like one of the top, 3 agents in the DMV.
Yeah. Yeah, she took off. Todd Vassar too was back there, and Jay Bauer, Andy Pierce. We had a bunch of great agents. So I feel very fortunate, and Matt and Heather too. And I think some of those early agents just sort of attracted other good agents. And I tend to believe that most good agents are going to succeed in whatever environment that they're in. So I think I was the beneficiary in many ways of that. But
it's amazing. It's like when you think about it, like when he's mentioned these agents, because it's been a while since I thought about this, but like these are like, because of their longevity in the business, all those different agents you're talking about, those are like the household name agents for DC in our market here. So
we're all getting old.
That's what's happening,
right? Fair enough.
We're all getting old.
We're trying to hide it, but yes. So that's incredible. Because again, thank you for refreshing my memory, because it's like it's been a little while. A lot's happened since. I mean, you remembered it's you. I'm like, wow, those people all worked with you at your brokerage. That's incredible. So tell us a little bit about Compass. Compass is an interesting transition point for at least in DC for our local market here, right? They came in, and a lot of these boutique brokerages were sort of swallowed up, whether it was like, you can explain what happened to you, but like we had Jim Bell on our show, and Jim Bell had his boutique brokerage in DC. And I don't think he really had any intention of just saying, sure, I'm going to become Compass as well. But they came in and scooped up all of his agents. They were writing checks and grabbing talent. And it was kind of like, he said it happened very quickly. So tell us about how Compass, the transition to Compass, worked with you. Tell us a little about that.
Sure. So I was going along with my 26 agents. We were a boutique company, and I was starting to think about, well, how am I going to scale this? At this point, it had become a large part of my business, and I had sort of evolved from just selling real estate and developing real estate to now having this brokerage component. And I was approached by Compass and had not really thought about selling my company, but Compass at the time was only in New York and was looking for their first market outside of New York. And so I always will meet with people and hear anything that someone has to say. So I had a lunch and was kind of intrigued, and I was on my way through New York. And so I agreed to go to New York and meet with the team there. And it was game changing for me. I mean, I met with Robert Refkin. I saw the Compass office. I stayed in New York that night. And the next morning I wrote Robert and said, we should do this. I think that Lindsey Reichman Real Estate will be better, and it'll be bigger, and it'll all happen faster if this is Compass, not Lindsey Reichman Real Estate. And I think that this is a good entry for you to get into the DC market. So basically immediately, I'd never seen anything in real estate like Compass. Like, it was exciting to me to see this sexy New York firm with all this talent and technology. And it was
big tech money.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And you brought them to DC. I mean, it sounds like it happened quick, almost like overnight.
Well, I mean, that was in July when I went to New York, and then I told them, let's do it. And we sort of negotiated it out. And by the end of the year, I sold my company to Compass, and Lindsey Reichman Real Estate became Urban Compass first for about a month, and then Compass, and then a rebranded Compass. So it was a bumpy landing there for 3 months, but the whole team stayed. Like, it was an exciting time.
Yes.
And then it took off. So,
I mean, obviously, it's a very smart business decision, no question about it. But my interest, I'm always interested because like there are sea change moments like that in industries where the larger force is like they're looking for territory and they come in to find a smaller business to either partner with or buy, and then you have your brokerage that you built. You're like, I've been doing things really well here. You know, is there a moment where you're like, well, I have pride in what I do, and I'm not going to allow this to happen, or it's not going to happen with this group? But maybe I'm just wondering, is like if you saw what they were doing, you're like, well, they're gonna do it anyway. And if they do, and if they're moving in like this with this kind of money and force, I'm gonna be out anyway, right?
Right. I mean, I guess my immediate attraction to the company was pretty mutually beneficial in that, like, I was enamored and excited to be a part of this company, and I thought how amazing that would be in DC and how good it would be for my staff and my agents. Like, I felt very comfortable looking at that opportunity and saying, you know, this is going to be good for everybody who I care a lot about in DC, and had no qualms with that. During the negotiations, you know, while I was trying to like make sure that it worked out for me and for everybody, like there was a moment where I thought to myself, well, I got to make sure I get to the finish line with this transaction, because if I don't, they're going to come.
Yes.
And if they come, I would hate to compete with this company at this stage of my career. Because you know, the brokerage model, as we know, is not a particularly profitable model unless you really get to scale. And so at the time, for me, I was, you know, very much bootstrapping it with my small office, and felt pretty vulnerable. So it was a good exit in that regard.
Yes.
And
the Compass moving into this market was proof of vulnerability to a lot of those brokerages. I mean, the markets are, they're tough, right? It's, you know, you're coming out of like a major recession point, and the market now is insane. I mean, but still not everyone's going to feast, right? So yeah, you can run pretty thin to the line with a boutique brokerage. It's very tricky.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how Compass, I think they covered a lot of ground with that.
Yeah, you know, I personally continue to think that the sort of buying of agents is a little bit overstated too. I mean, I was very much involved. Like, once I sold the company, at the beginning, I was president of the region. So I was like principal broker, head recruiter. I was wearing a bunch of hats and was out there with Robert on the ground trying to recruit agents. And I mean, what I think took place is that we had this really great core group of agents. So there was a culture from my company that I think was important early on. And then we had this really great support structure. But what I had never had was this cool brand, and then the ability to have these beautiful offices, and the sort of sense of something bigger. And so when Compass sort of brought all that to the table, I felt like that combination is what made it take off. And there were some incentives, and there were some, you know, beyond that. But a lot of the growth was because of those fundamentals. And it went from 26 agents when we sold in December. I was involved for 15 months, and we got to 260 agents during that period of time.
Wow, that's insane.
That's
growth.
amazing.
It was extraordinary growth. It was drinking from a fire hose. And Compass had not gone into a new market prior to that. So it was not the well-oiled machine, you know, like it or not. Like, it's a pretty well-oiled machine now. It wasn't at the time. It was a bumpy ride where they were figuring it out as they went, and we were trying to work with them, and it was a lot. But,
so when you guys had the meeting with your group, Lindsay Reishman Real Estate, was everybody bought in, or did you have some feedback before you guys signed off on the paperwork with Compass? How did that play out?
I couldn't disclose it before I made the deal for a variety of reasons. Right. And so there was definitely, like, the sales meeting was a, you know, guess what, guys? Hey,
yeah, we're Compass.
There's Robert, and
it's going to be great.
Yes.
It's always tricky with agents too. So agents are funny, right? Because like how dare I say that, right?
Exactly.
It's like agents are weird though. Agents have pride too in the business that they're doing, and they get comfortable where they are, and they're like, this is my spot. This is what I'm doing. I like how everything's going, and it's not always up to them. It's, you know, they're working for a broker, right? They're salespeople. So once they give up that control, but they have freedom, but they give up some control with that.
Sure.
So it's your call. I mean, at the end of the day. So yeah, it can be a really tricky thing for a lot of agents.
But I mean, you know, almost everybody stayed on. We had a little bit of attrition. very little, but almost everybody stayed. And to their credit, I mean, Compass would not be where it is today without the work of that initial group of agents.
Totally agree.
Like, yeah, no doubt.
And they stuck it out during, some of the times where the tech wasn't working right,
sure,
and all that sort of stuff. And they really provided a lot of value to Compass as Compass figured it out, and it was a testament to them.
So as an agent, because I just know running a group, it's hard because you're wearing a couple of different hats and it's challenging. But as an agent, getting a new company up and run twice, right? Because you're doing it with Lindsay Reishman Real Estate, and now you're doing it with Compass. How does your agent business work? Or how?
Well, so I stopped selling once I sold to Compass because it was going from 26 agents to 260 was just drinking from a fire hose. Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah, and I also felt like, that was my job at that point, was to be the broker. And I felt like I couldn't sell real estate and do that during that phase. So I stopped selling. I hired somebody who kept my development business sort of going during that time, and focused fully on the growth of the business. And then, which is a challenge though, because then, fast forward to 2016, and I got out of the management side of Compass and decided to get back into selling. And it's hard to get that going again. I mean, you guys are, I'm jealous of y'all because you've had that momentum for years. And if I stopped farming. I stopped sending out those postcards. Nobody knew I was a luxury condominium specialist, and I had moved out of the neighborhood. So all that was really hard.
Yeah, they forget.
I know.
They're like, oh, I remember that name, sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
People move, yeah.
But okay, so like kind of like intertwined with this, I want to go back to the development thing. So that's originally in your career, you were looking for development deals. You were like learning about that side of the business. All this entire time, you were still involved in the development business,
right? Like along the way, in 2008, my cousin, who is a general contractor, had been building projects for developers, and I had been finding projects for developers. So we said, okay, let's do one. Yeah. And we cobbled together a little bit of money and did a property, did a little house flip in Capitol Hill, and then took the profits, did one more deal. So we started sort of, organically growing that development business. Okay. And so, in 2016, when I got out of the management role at Compass, part of my vision was that I was going to get more involved in the development, which had up to that point always been a little bit of a side hustle.
Okay, yeah.
So getting into the dirty details on that, in 2008, you said you scrabbled up some money. Can you tell us about that? Like, were you and your cousin have the money? Are you going for hard money?
No. I mean, this
regular lender?
This was we bought a $200,000 townhouse at an auction in Capitol Hill, so it was not a huge sum of money.
Okay.
And this was a client of mine who agreed to participate. I can't remember the total dollar amounts, but I'm pretty sure we would have needed probably about $80,000, and he put in 25, and maybe I had, with my partner 25, and we had one other agent who had 25 or something. Yeah, okay. It was very much cobbling it together and then getting the rest from the bank. Yeah. And then over time, we were very fortunate that we had one key investor who I'd met at an open house who kept putting money into our deals.
You met at an open house?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Some trust built
really quickly. From an open house.
Well, and then, we made him a little money, but it was one at a time.
Well, they know where to find you.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, how does that conversation go? Just like for the average listener that's, first-time agent working an open house, and they're like trying to get this, person coming through the front door to buy this $500,000 condo. You're getting this buyer to come in and like stroke a check for X amount of dollars for...
Well, that was not all at once. I mean, so
there might have been a couple like conversations.
Right.
If I remember correctly, this guy, his son had a condo in the neighborhood. Okay. So it was a sort of traditional open house conversation where he said, oh, I might be selling something around the corner. Can you come take a look? I said, sure. And then over the course of many meetings with him, it became clear that we were doing a few development projects or looking to do development, and he agreed to support us. And he happens to be somebody who has done angel investing and who is an investor and does real estate too. So it was a fortunate find.
See, Brent, you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. So you should start doing open houses.
I need to get back onto the
All right.
onto the horse there and start doing some open houses.
Yeah, good stuff does come from it every now and then. But we've, over the years, we started raising friends and family money where we basically did glorified promissory notes for to friends and family who trusted us and still trust us, and that's been the foundation of
it's
our
like
money.
your inside crew, basically.
So usually we're able to sort of get a project with that, and then we pass the hat around to a few investors who participate in the specific project, and then we are still using first trust and sometimes second trust money to fund these deals.
Fascinating.
I like this a lot. I like hearing about this because it's always cool. It's like, how are they and who and what? If he's that rich, why is he?
Exactly. Where does
it's
money
never
come from?
quite like that, right?
Yeah, I think development is the most misunderstood. Like it seems from the outside like this wonderful, interesting, sexy business, and then you get into it, and it's brutal. I put in an offer this week on a property that had 31 offers. We were 10th out of 31. So everyone wants the project, and so you end up squeezing the margin out of it before you even put a shovel in the ground, and then getting it through the neighborhood, and the whole thing, and then you're the last person to get paid, and so it's I think it's a lot tougher than people realize.
Some of the guys I work with now, every conversation I have with them is like, man, since we've started the permitting process, it's been 2.5 years, and the cost of everything is now 40% higher, and I'm just like, so why are you still doing this, man? It's people are questioning why they're even bothering at this point. It's gotten really tricky.
Usually, just like all these things, there's a cycle, and it doesn't feel to me like the bottom's going to fall out, but it does feel to me like this has gotten too hard. Some people are going to get shaken out of this because
if there's no money to be made, why would someone do the job? So that puts pressure on the market to go the other way. Naturally. But we'll see. We'll just see how that.
There's been
out.
Some good developers, as you know, that have left or are leaving the city, and it's part of it. Finding the deal, cost, dealing with the city. They're just we'll go to North Carolina, and it's a lot easier down there.
A lot more land.
A lot more land, and you still, you're in Research Triangle. There's a lot of schools right there, so there's always turnover.
Well, there's been that sort of movement too, and the developers have started to speak up and say that it's not a foregone conclusion that developers will want to develop in DC eternally, and I think sometimes the city takes that for granted, and they make it hard between TOPA and then some of these chimney extension rules and the zoning of RF1. The rules keep changing.
DCRA, are you listening?
We had a hard time with the chimney extension rule, and we couldn't get an agreement with our neighbor, and that set us back 6 months. We had to pinch the back of the house because of that. We actually had to extend one of the neighbor's chimneys, whatever's I think it's 3 feet over 2, whatever it was, but it's the average consumer is not going to think about doing that.
In the world's smallest potatoes story, I'm working with a seller right now, and the roof is shot on the house. It's in DuPont, right down the street, and I said, hey, before we put this in the market, let's just do the roof, right? So DCRA requires a sign off from each neighbor. So I found one neighbor. He's an investor. He lives in Potomac. Can't find the other neighbor. It's an abandoned house. It's an LLC in LA. I don't even know how to find a human being. We've FedExed the address, no response. There's no phone numbers.
On you, right? You have to provide it.
As far as I understand, I'm going to reach out to the roofing company and say, hey, is there an alternative for this? Because we're trying to put a roof on this house, but it's
you have to call the Anacostia River. Maybe they're over there.
Yeah,
body bag.
But it's just weird because I go over to the house and it's just it's literally an abandoned house on 16th Street, and it's what? There's no answer to this question. I don't know. So whatever. I'll figure it out at some point. I'm sure I'll run into some worker over there or something, and I'll figure it out. But it seems like.
What would you do, Lindsay?
Yeah, Lindsay.
I don't know, man. Let me know if you want us to develop it. That's all I can say. Okay. If you can find the owner, you can represent us on the development.
Well, all right. So we've covered how you started. You were with a small brokerage, then you had your own brokerage, then the Compass thing, which was huge. You are on a different venture now, right?
Yeah.
So what is the name of your new company?
Pareto,
okay.
Mm-hmm. Which
I wanted
is
to let you pronounce it first because when I saw it, I was I wasn't quite sure. Pareto, all right.
And then why? That's the other question.
Yeah.
You've done so well in everything you've done up to date. Why now? Why start something new?
I sometimes you just have to shake it up a little bit. I was happy at Compass, and I'm proud of what Compass has gone on to become, but just had gotten a little bit stagnant and felt like I needed something shaken up. And so, I guess I started thinking about what I wanted from the next phase of my career. And I realized how much I enjoyed my old boutique brokerage and the relationships I had and the ability to work closely with agents to try to figure out how to help them grow their business. And I like all of that. I like all of it, as much, if not more, than being an agent. And so it's exciting to me to think about getting back into that space.
So you went from 26 agents to 260. Where's Compass at now with their agent count?
I forget.
So
I think it's 1,000-ish. I mean, I don't know.
Locally, it's
I think so.
Damn.
Yeah. So you wanted to bring it back home.
Yeah, I missed the intimate experience, and I also missed just I of course sold the company, so I did no longer have been part of management or ownership or anything of that sort, and so I like the idea of being back in charge and doing things the way I'd like to see them done, and dig into that more. And the one piece it's been interesting to do because some of it is deja vu. I remember these projects that I kind of was working on, and as I'm getting back into this mental space of like, how am I going to do this? What should this be? I'm remembering I come to some of the same conclusions, and so I'm back where I was when I sold the company years ago.
So you have like a business plan or like notebook from 2008?
Unfortunately, my note-taking skills are not as well kept as they should be. But mentally, I'm coming across a few things where I'm like, oh yeah, I was working on that back in the day. But what I'm excited about this go around that I didn't quite get to is I feel like we systemized contract to close, we systemized listings, we had runners. All of that was really well done. We were good at supporting agents who had a business and allowing them to focus on that business, but we never systemized the creation of that business. And I think that's achievable. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to really dig into that and try to figure out what are the things that you guys are doing that is driving your business and that top agents have done, and create a structure that other agents can use as a blueprint. And I feel like if I can do that, then that gives me, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and be more in the weeds with agents than any large brokerage will be able to do. And that's my only sort of opportunity for a competitive advantage. Right. So that's what I'm sort of excited to explore. And then I've partnered with this company Side out of California.
I want to know a little about, tell us about Side. What is Side and what is the partnership about? Tell us about that.
It's they call it brokerage as a service or white label brokerage. These are new terms being thrown around. Sure. But they basically, they don't have to come get a footprint in DC in order to set up shop in DC. So technically they are the broker of record, but I own and operate Pareto. But the relationship is traditionally, what a brokerage would provide. So they make sure that we're compliant. They provide a principal broker, and then they provide a lot of the services that I would have, as a boutique owner, been required to provide on my own.
Okay, but the branding is individual, right?
Correct.
So you're not part of it's not like a Century 21 or a Century 21 or Coldwell Banker would be a better example, I guess, like a nationwide brand. You have your own individual boutique brand here in DC.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Side has 400 relationships with Paretos in California, Florida, and Texas. Mm-hmm. And so this is the first in this region, but they basically support small boutique operations and allow us to run a more sophisticated and compete with some of the bigger guns now. That would be hard to do if I were just operating a boutique brokerage on my own.
So how does it work? Just because, again, we're Sotheby's International Realty, which global affiliations touching different cities and touch points. Is there a back-end system, whether it's Side or something that if you're going to Texas or California or Florida, you can tap into their agent network?
Yes. So that is one of the benefits versus being an independent is that I now have access to agents across the country. And I've actually gotten a decent amount of referrals right out of the gate, which is new for me. It's nice. And they've got training as well. They also provide a marketing team who will execute against what we want to do, recruiters who will recruit on my behalf, and business managers who will help meet with me on a regular basis and think about strategically as an agent what I'm trying to achieve and help me do that.
Are you the principal broker for DC, Maryland, Virginia, or someone else?
Someone else.
Someone else. Okay.
So they provide also, I guess, that service that I don't have to worry about compliance. They make sure that all of the contracts are compliant, and I don't have that liability either.
So are you like head of sales, or what's like?
So I own Pareto.
You own it.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So if I can grow Pareto, I could sell it in the future, though that's not
Gotcha.
my intent. But it's,
So their role is like because it's like what are they giving back in this partnership? So they're dealing with all the compliance stuff. They've created also through this network is other like-minded people like you who wanted to start boutique brokerages. So they're connecting this and trying to make it cohesive and not as expensive. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting model.
Do they help with the branding too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Are they exclusive? I'm just wondering, like, what would Max and I are like? All right, we're quitting Sotheby's today, and we're
starting
have,
another,
keyed in, real estate group.
Perfect. I like it. Let's do it.
We're sold.
It is not exclusive, which was one of the things I was nervous about at first because I talked to some franchises about doing something here, and this was one of my concerns. But I guess a couple things that I've determined is that Pareto will succeed or fail on its own merit, and I believe like the support and the services that Side is providing are helping me, execute on my vision of what a boutique brokerage could be. But it probably would be very different from what Keyed In would be. So if you guys came up with your brokerage and did your thing, it's probably just going to have a different value proposition. Right. And so the more I sort of wrapped my head around that, the more comfortable I got with the idea that that's fine. And in fact, it's kind of beneficial because we are still one brokerage then. So, with some of the bright MLS rules, as we grow with partners, we would be able to function as a brokerage in that regard.
Interesting.
How fresh is Pareto? Like when did you guys open them?
About a month ago.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah, very right, hot off the press.
Yeah, right.
So you took 26 from Lindsay Reishman to Compass. How many went from Compass to Pareto?
Or who's your school?
Well,
So ultimately, I was running a group at Compass, and we were 10 agents, and half those agents came, and half decided to stay at Compass.
So you have it's yourself and 5 agents.
You have 5 agents,
and we're just the Reichman group right now. Yeah. So, so I'm still functioning as a group under Pareto, and my vision is that I'll get a few agents who will come over, and we can show that we can operationalize and scale their business, and then as we do that, we can move on and do that with the next group and the next group and sort of go from there.
Yeah, and then just tear through all the other brokerages, and it's like there's only one.
Yes.
I don't think that'll be the case. Like I actually
changer here.
I want to keep it boutique too. Like
I'm just messing with you.
I know.
Well, he's a trendsetter, so
he is a trendsetter.
Yes.
You got to give him that. So.
I do like being early on the curve.
Well, but you have to admit, like we're not used to this right now. People like going back to boutique brokerage or smaller brokerage. That's like you're like going the other way.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Awesome. This is looking at on a macro level, but if you even look at like department stores or malls or whatnot, it seems like the consumer in general is not wanting the big box brand like an Neiman Marcus or a Macy's. They want like the mom and pop shop, right? They want to go to the big mall. They want to go to the store down the street that's owned by Leslie that's 6 blocks over, not somebody up in New York that they can't see and touch. That's my thought.
I hope you're right. I like your thinking. But I do think historically there has been an ebb and a flow, that when we had the boutiques back in the day, they got gobbled up and it all became big. But that has happened before, and then they sort of break off again and boutiques rise. And so I kind of feel like that will happen, and it's a more modern version of it. That can live in today's space.
I mean, technically, some of like one of our top competitors here in DC, the Washington Fine Properties, they're still a boutique brokerage. Like they're they're extremely successful, and they've never really changed that much. So it's not impossible. I'm sure. I'm not as familiar with other markets. I'm sure you're becoming more familiar with other markets now that you're part of this, and also being part of Compass before. But it's like there are all kinds of real estate companies functioning all over the country.
Yeah,
it's not all just Compass or like Long and Foster and big names. It's a lot of people doing a lot of different things.
And that's a great question. It brings up a great question. Like, are you studying other markets, whether it's like New York, Miami, Atlanta, wherever, to see what these small boutiques are doing, something different than we're seeing here in Washington, D.C.?
I'm just getting into it, so I haven't had an opportunity. That is a good idea and a good question. I'd love to, but I haven't seen it fully. I guess I do think that what I learned from all of this is that agents are going to do what's in their best interest, and I guess I think we'll always do this, and that leads to the ebb and flow of boutiques and the breakup of big companies, is because, at a certain point, there's just opportunity to participate in something that is new and to branch off and to create value again in something new. So I feel like outside Wall Street money is always trying to solve for this and try to make things more efficient. And I think there's an inherent arrangement in real estate where agents want to pursue what's in their best interest and what's hopefully in their client's best interest and create. And so it's just, I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels to me like it brings people together and splits people apart.
Yep.
Pareto, where did that name come from?
The Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule. Oh, yeah. More commonly known. And I like it because it's one word. Sounds kind of cool to me. Yeah. Italian. I like all that. But I actually had a different name. I was almost called it Local Source, and then a few people told me that was a bad idea, so I changed it.
Local Source. I like Pareto better.
I like Pareto better.
Good job.
Local Source reminds me of going to the grocery store, like my local source produce.
I think you may have told me that. You may have been one of the contributors to helping me.
On the board of advisors for naming.
Naming companies is hard.
No doubt.
Where were we? We were keyed in D.C. and we got screamed at from somebody. And
someone said you're not the first. We had a little slogan that was DC's first real estate podcast, and someone said technically you're not. And I'm not. I don't know. I can't remember who. But we were like, well, we're actually just keyed in now. We're nationwide, so no problem.
Always branding and rebranding. It makes it fun, keeps it interesting. We had our faces on this, and I don't know where our faces went to.
Yeah, I miss our faces.
Yeah,
I saw that on the
myself.
Podcast itself. Still has your face.
That's right.
The M&Ms have our faces. More importantly,
Well,
I do love the fact you guys are doing this. It's great.
Well, we appreciate you coming out here, and like I said, before, we are blessed, grateful, amazed that all these fantastic professionals from our industry are happy to come on here and talk to us. I think it's amazing. And Lindsay, awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing all this with us. And you nailed it, beginning to end on exactly everything I was interested to hear. So I really appreciate telling us all that.
And everything you've done, it's turned to gold, right?
Yeah,
Whether
really.
It's your group, your brokerage, your development, your new brokerage, everything you've done is it's been ultra successful across the board.
You all are kind. Thank you. Fingers crossed on this one, but I appreciate you having me on, and this is great that you're doing it. So congrats.
Good things.
So we have rapid fire, 5 quick and easy questions.
This is going to be the hard part.
It's going to be the hard part.
Right.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Shark Tank. I love watching Shark Tank lots.
Is it still on NBC?
It's on
MSNBC.
NBC. That's what I was going to say. It's on one of those
They have all the repeats too, and it's a great show.
I can watch the same one, which is it's a bit of an addiction.
I really like the two that I like the most. It's Mark Cuban and Barbara Corcoran. They're really good.
It's a great show.
Well, so favorite TV show is going to be
Shark Tank.
Not Pam and Tommy.
Again,
come on, I can't get anybody to watch this.
We're trying to be family oriented.
Family oriented, yes.
Yeah, I'll stick with Shark Tank.
Your favorite restaurant here in DC? Where are you taking clients or family?
I'm a creature of habit, so I go to the same spots all the time. I go to Millie's constantly up in Spring Valley.
That's right there on
Mass Ave.
Yeah.
Is that a popular one?
No,
it's been a few years.
I think that counts, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think. It's right.
You're
have
too
the
far
Crate and
downtown,
Barrel.
man.
I don't get past the DuPont Circle. This is far enough west for me.
Yeah, I am live in the inner suburban existence now.
When you're not selling real estate or managing real estate or developing properties, what's your hobby?
Chasing after my children.
Chasing after your children. How old are your kids?
4 kids.
Whoa.
So, what are their age range?
I got 7th grader, 5th grader, and 2 3rd graders.
Wow. So your hands are full.
I really am pretty much usually doing real estate or with my family, running around, taking them to sports. I saw Max.
We run into each other out on the soccer field over at Jolliffe a couple of times. So yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
I joke with people. It's they're like, you want to meet after 2 or 3, and I'm like, I can't. At 3 o'clock, I become a professional Uber driver because it's soccer, dance, tennis, basketball, ice skating now. I'm like, wow.
That's what when I saw you that one night, I asked you, I said, so what's going on? You're just like, just driving kids around. That's exactly the first thing you said.
It's true. I wish I had a more exciting existence, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
Last question here. We're February of 22. Any predictions for the rest of this calendar year in the real estate market?
I mean,
Pareto becomes number one.
That's
obviously.
right. Obviously. Let's see. I mean, rates are going to go up. I think maybe things soften a little bit as a result. And so,
what's going to make them the rates going up are going to make them soften?
I mean, yeah. You all tell me. You probably know as well as
I just like
do.
hearing the answers, right? It's like, this is stuff I can go back to our clients. I'm like, well, Lindsay said this.
I literally do that. I literally do that when people say, like, what do you think's going on with the market? Like the last three guests, I just say what they said.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what they want to hear.
Rates are going up.
You know, what do professionals think?
My guess would be that there's a lot of activity now because rates are going up. So maybe finally things will soften a little bit once rates are higher and a little more inventory will come into play. But
do you think there will be more inventory coming
just because maybe everything won't fly off the shelf in a heartbeat? But
it's going to take a lot more inventory.
I know. I feel like DC never gets to that space.
That's right.
Really. But it's just particularly chaotic these days.
The chaos too. And it's also, there's like an intense like FOMO action going on with the frenzy right now too. And it's like, you know, houses that were, I just keep looking at stuff in Chevy Chase as like a great example. It's like houses that were 1.1 or 1.2 are now easy 1.5. And then houses that were 1.5 are over 2. And you're like, and it happens quickly.
Yeah.
You know
what is interesting too? I was talking to some agents in Boston where historically I have thought of Boston and DC as pretty parallel markets.
Yeah.
But they're like getting $4,000 a square foot on luxury condos now in Boston. So they've
eclipsed us.
Because I feel like we've had a hot market, but somehow we don't have that kind of money and numbers in DC.
No, that's crazy. And I think New York, they historically have traded for the last decade around $10,000 a foot for their luxury condos, which that's a whole nother ball game.
Well, it's a source of money too. I mean, in Boston, you still have there's a lot of finance money in Boston.
Right.
So, and New York, obviously. So DC is interesting. I think it's changing a lot. When I do a lot of my TikToks, I post the property and then the price, and I get tons of comments like, what do these people do to afford these places? So I'm about to do a couple different videos, just like, here's what the last 5 clients in this range do. And it's, lawyer, and there's a lot of tech people now here in DC that weren't here before. So it's evolving here too, very quickly.
Interesting.
So different sources of money.
The things you learn on TikTok, right?
The things you learn. It's been a
I
real.
won't tell you what I learned on TikTok.
Yeah, please.
It's not Pam and Tommy.
Family.
Yes.
Lindsay, thanks again.
Yeah,
really
thank you all. This was fun.
All right.
Congrats
and
on
as
this.
one last token here is appreciation for coming onto the show. We do a charity. So if there's a charity of your choosing, we'll do a small donation on your behalf.
Oh, that's very nice. Well, Children's Hospital is always my favorite.
Children's Hospital.
We got that.
That's kind.
Thank
is that from the advertising revenue or?
It is M&Ms.
Nice.
Yeah. M&Ms. If you're listening, M&Ms.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at KeyedInPodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.